Mike, George, Grand Rising. How are you both
Doing
doing?
good. How are you doing?
Good, good. How about you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah, nice and sunny here in the UK, and enjoying a bank holiday as well. So an extra day off today, which is great. So yeah,
Oh,
happy
what
days.
holiday is it today?
How about yourself?
I was like,
What's
what
that? Sorry.
holiday is it over there?
Yeah, it's just the August bank holiday. I'm not actually sure what the history is, what the rationale is behind it. But yeah, just a Monday off at the end of August. I guess it's the last weekend, technically, of summer. This end. So yeah, a time to go out and enjoy the vestiges of the good weather.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
which
I
was
go ahead.
Yeah, which would have been historically associated my side anyway with going out and probably been in the pub for 3 days straight. But
Right.
things have changed a little bit these days. So yeah, diversifying slightly with no pub gardens in sight. So yeah, happy days.
That's right. Yeah, I hear you. My wife and I, so on this side of the pond, it's Labor Day weekend coming up, and my wife and I are going to the beach, and it would have been might not call them a pub, but let's call it a pub over here too. That would have been what was happening there too, but no longer for me either. And it was great the last couple times we've gone without that included. Before we I, Before we just jump right into a couple topics, whatever comes up, which is pretty typical. I know, Mike, you have been on twice, I believe, in conversation. So this is the third time, and I don't think it's coincidental that I asked George if he could join. So it's three of us on the third time we've talked together, Mike. So I'd love to just have this be kind of a roundtable discussion about anything that comes up. For those of you watching and have seen some of Mike's programs, or you can look it back on the conversations we've had and some of the things he does. I'm sure it'll probably come up in topic of conversation. What I'd like to do, if you're both good with it, we'll just kind of jump into where each of us are at. I'd love to hear from the two of you, especially you, Mike. We haven't talked for probably a couple months now. So I'd love to hear just kind of where you are. But thank you very much, both of you, for taking the time to join me today.
My pleasure to be here.
So, Mike, how has the last couple months gone since we've last spoken? I'm curious.
Yeah. The last couple of months have been good. It's been summer this end, which would have been, I guess, normally associated with all sorts of things, probably drinking related, partying related, holiday related, all that sort of stuff. And it hasn't. It's simply put, it hasn't. I started a new job for about 3 months ago, which has been good. I've got my head down, cracked on with that. I've been fortunate enough to meet my partner a couple of months ago, so it's sort of in a new relationship, which would have been for me previously quite a daunting thing to sort of go through with the absence of alcohol and sober, and all those sort of stuff, dealing with the nerves and the apprehension, all those sort of bits and pieces. But to put it in short, it's been really great. The new job's going well. Got my head down and cracking on with that, and making progress. And yeah, the new relationship's going really well as well. Sort of making memories. I'm doing my best to sort of feel present and just make the most of each day, and carrying on with all the other good routines and disciplines that I've instilled in my life since quitting alcohol, such as hitting the gym and reading lots and just trying to learn and just keep growing, keep developing, keep moving forward, and keep always having something positive to work towards.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty good. I'm in a good place, and really really grateful for that. And fun enough, I've had a few reflections about alcohol in recent months, mainly due to meeting my partner, and it's been a topic of conversation. She's been interested about it, and I've been, it's been interesting for me to talk about it. But it's brought to the surface again, my journey and the reflection of that. And I think it actually really hit me. I think over the last couple of days we've actually, it's been a topic of conversation. Just really reflected and looked back and thought, wow, stuff's actually really changed in the
Yeah.
last few years.
Yeah.
And it's brought me to be able to experience these opportunities. So there's been some gratitude there as well, which has been pretty cool.
Right.
So yeah, it's been good, really great.
That's beautiful. I want to I want to ask a few things just about that. So so your partner has she had a similar journey or path to you? Is alcohol still in her life? How is it? It's interesting because I don't know if I'd heard you mentioned about this the last couple times, and maybe this is with the people that you help who are trying to either slow down or quit alcohol outright, about relationships and working on themselves first, things like that. So what have you found, and what is your partner's experience for herself?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. I mean, sort of. Firstly, I don't think it's been a topic that we've discussed. I mean, normally I am quite a private person. When it comes to my personal life and all those stuff. Through people I meet at work, the gym. I tend to keep myself to myself, and I like it that way. However, relationships, in terms of intimate relationships, in sobriety is a really big thing. It's a really big area, and it's a really big transition. Because I'd spent a lot of my life, whether it's sort of, going out, dating, with partners, socializing, the core of that is revolved around alcohol. And then you're suddenly, going through those motions and those experiences with, clear faculties, a sober mind, and it is quite different. Something that was quite important for me was, to be with someone who, I'm not saying, I'm sort of an advocate that they have to be sober. I don't believe in that at all. However, I do need someone that I feel quite, comfortable with, that
Can be
is
your
not going to lead
advocate.
me,
They can at least be
yeah,
your
that's
advocate.
not going to lead me astray or awry, or there's not going to be that temptation that I'm surrounded by all the time. And I'm also, quite, one to say that I don't really get tempted too much. I don't see it like that. I see my life as changed now, and I believe in my new life so much that it really does build such a barrier between me and alcohol, and I believe in the direction that I'm going. I'm not going to be pulled against that. However, it was important for me to be with someone who's understanding of that, and to to sort of wrap it all up. I mean, ultimately, she's not sort of inclined to drink at all too much, and that's just her choice and her lifestyle, and that's something that I'm really compatible with, which is amazing. And we've had the conversation, and had the conversation quite early on, and that was, it's a bit of a heart and mouth moment, because you worry, I believe in who I am and my journey, but you worry that, there might be an adverse reaction from somebody, just because they might see it as strange or abnormal. And you potentially sort of anticipate a little bit of pushback, when you have that conversation, but it was
Right.
received with, complete, support, understanding, a few questions, of course, that's going to happen. But in short, it has been really great. And things have moved forward really steadily from there. And part of that reflection, that I mentioned, I've had some conversations, was thinking, wow, actually the authenticity of the experiences that we've enjoyed has been something that's been so profound for me, and
Right.
quite new in a sense as well, because it's been doing it differently, but it's been doing it in such a real way,
Yeah.
and, enjoying those moments, making memories, and it's been quite captivating as a result. Yeah, it's been different. It's been a bit of a step into the unknown.
Right.
But look, anything that is worth doing is right. You're going to get that apprehension, that anxiety. Anything that's worth doing is going to be a little bit intimidating. It is going to be a bigger step. It's not meant to be easy, but it will be worth it. And that's what I found, and it's really cool. So yeah, just going to keep going. But the compatibility is really great so far.
I love hearing that. Thank you for sharing it. Yeah, it's interesting for anyone in an intimate relationship, especially someone like like you mentioned, you have a little bit of trepidation about, well, what will they think, and ultimately it matters for you, and they'll make their choice whether it works for them or not. But I totally understand what you mean. I would, at least in my experience, I think describing as someone that you used to drink and you don't now, it nowadays seems to be fairly, acceptable. I guess I'll put it that way without too many questions. I was laughing a little bit, not at what you were saying, but I was thinking of how people where I work now, I've mentioned about alcohol, and many of them actually, I'm surprised and thrilled about it, have stopped as well. But then when I mentioned I stopped coffee, they're like, "Who are you?" And you're an alien. I can't. If you stop that too, then I don't know how. It just makes me laugh a little bit of like,
Coffee is
okay,
the
I guess coffee's
super
not too
drug that is so
acceptable.
accepted.
Right. It was almost like I violated some universal code that I, that I wasn't allowed to
It's
do.
funny how much
Well, I
everything
used to
ties
drink,
around alcohol or coffee.
right?
And then if you
Right.
remove
Yeah.
those
Or
and you look
sugar.
at it, okay,
Yeah.
what do you do?
Yeah,
If you remove the coffee and the alcohol, what does life look
Yeah.
like, and how do people react? Because I mean, so much revolves around
I
it.
I know. Well, and then if you include Mike, I don't know if I'd mentioned this to you. I think I'd done one by the time you and I talked the last time. We probably talked in May or April because you and I started a new job around the same time. I've done a
yeah.
3 day fast, a water fast, and then a
Oh,
five
wow.
day, and both were great. It was interesting to get the, I'm going to call them phantom hunger pangs, because your body's fine. It really is. I know not everyone feels that way, and you should do your own research, decide what you want to do, if at all. But um, to realize the amount of time, so not drinking alcohol, not drinking coffee, and then not eating for that period of
Yeah.
time
You have like
was
three new
wonderful. It
days
was
in
a
a day.
wonderful. Well, that's what the amount of time that you have when you're not thinking about any of those three things. It's just like, wow, there is a lot of time in the day, and it was even having a regular job. It should have been stressful, but it wasn't. It just didn't feel stressful, which is maybe my mentality too. But anyhow, that just made me think of that. You also mentioned Mike, temptation. And you mentioned you aren't too tempted any longer. I'm curious, and George has heard this now. Temptation, does it come to you just in the waking world, or have you had dreams about temptation as well? And I have, so that's why I'm curious now to ask if either of you have had temptation, either about alcohol or some other type of vice that maybe you've stopped or are trying to stop. Have you had that, Mike, for alcohol in particular, or others?
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly. I know that we were sort of mentioning about the dreams and stuff like that over the course of last week, and yeah, I've definitely had dreams about alcohol. The ones where you sort of, you relapse, or you're taking a drink of alcohol, and it feels so real at the time. And then, I've had it before where I've woken up and I thought it was real, for a few seconds there, you're in a bit of a daze, quite a lucid dream, lucid experience. And then you sort of realize that it wasn't, that it was just a dream, sorry, and not reality. And then you get a sort of a rush of relief come over you as a consequence. But yeah, it's a very, very strange experience. But when I've had that, fun enough, I mean, that relief has only reinforced, my resolve in the sense that it sort of reassures me that the journey I'm on, how strongly I feel about it, and how it's very strange. It's almost like a quasi relapse that says to me, yeah, wow, you would imagine if you actually really did go back to drinking, or you did give in to temptation. It's almost a glimpse of how severe that would be and that would feel. So, once the horror's over, in the after the initial wake up, it can almost be actually beneficial in sense of reinforces how terrible experiencing that would be. But it's very strange. And having said that, it's actually something I haven't experienced for, I can't remember the last time that happened, but I've definitely had several of those experiences, but not for a very long time, gratefully. But yeah, how about yourself, and how about you,
I
George?
don't know that I've had dreams about addiction like that of any kind. But I do. I have had dreams that have been lucid that do seem very real. Um, it's very interesting. It had never occurred to me about, because I don't think I've ever drank coffee or drank anything at all in a dream that I can recall. So that's interesting. But I know you can experience many different things in dreams. I just haven't had anything having to do with ingestion of any kind, which is weird. Like, why haven't I drank
Gotcha.
anything in a dream? Glass of water or milk or coffee or anything.
Well, kind of the same thing that some people have suggested that most people don't see phones or
Yeah,
technology
that's a weird one, isn't
in
it?
dreams too, right? But yeah, so Mike, probably in May when my wife probably went. I think it was the last time that we went to beach just ourselves without our kids, and it wasn't the first time I don't think that we went. Since I stopped alcohol back in January, but so it'd been a fair amount of time, not too long. And I remember having a dream where I either got confused of what the drink was or something, but anyway, I consumed a pint or at least a portion of it. And I stopped myself in the dream, and I'm like, God, I can't believe that I did that. Like it was an honest mistake. I didn't do it intentionally. It was almost as if I got tricked into do it or whatever else. And I woke up and told her about it, and I was like, well, it's good that I had that mistake, if you will, for me anyhow, like in a dream. And then last night, and maybe it was because I was thinking about this conversation. I don't
Yeah.
know. And I don't think I want to mention the artist's name because I haven't heard great things about him now. But there was the first concert that I ever went to in the early '90s. Very well known singer. She's a country singer, so you can probably guess who it is. But at any rate, I won't name names. But for some reason, and I'm a singer too, not on any level other than local bands, stuff like that. But I was invited to sing along with him, and some other person, like a national anthem at like a baseball game or something, and then also two other songs which I didn't know what the songs were. And it was like the dream wanted me to be nervous, wanted me to be anxious about that.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him like as if I knew this, famous person or anything like that. And he was like, "Well, you should just take a drink. Like you'll feel better. You're nervous." Like, he was calling me, even though he's older than me, in this dream, and in real life, he was calling me old. He was saying that he was saying that you look really nervous. You need to do this and that. Thankfully, in that dream, I was like, no, I didn't actually just really respond. Like nothing to his insults, nothing to him saying I should take a drink. I just kind of stood there and just sort of observed. Almost I think I could almost tell I was dreaming anyway, but I felt awake enough to be able to navigate like I would in real life. This has led me more and more, just like the dreams that we kind of exchanged, comments last week too. I feel like I've arrived at a place where lessons are being learned real time in this real waking world with the three of us, like it is here, but that I'm also doing it in dreams. And the dreams don't usually recur. They don't recur if I quote, pass the lesson, and I moved up a grade or the exam was done or something. So it's been really interesting, and I dare say it's kind of enjoyable to now think, okay, well, what dream am I going to dream of tonight? Am I going to be battling something? Is it going to be so anyway, that's why I asked about it, because it hadn't really occurred that way. But back when I was drinking, the volumes that I wasn't really dreaming at all. It was just darkness. And I wasn't blackout drinking, but it certainly just was nothing through the night.
I have a quick
So I don't know.
question for both you guys, if you don't mind me interrupting. Like, when did for you guys drinking become a problem, or when do you think you got started? And like, was it you just got started and then it was immediately a problem, or was it just kind of like it just snuck up on you guys?
Mike, what do you think for you?
So for me, it was drinking alcohol became a problem without me realizing that it had become a problem. So I sort of, that sounds counter intuitive, but um, in a sense, I became acclimatized to drinking so much from, I guess, an early-ish age, maybe 15, 16, something like that. And it was just ingrained habitually in my social life, through school, college. As I've discussed and alluded to with Adam before, I sort of have a musical background, being an ex-drummer, and I was just around alcohol and venues and bars and hotels just all the time. And not just that, I was surrounded by other people that endorsed alcohol and just saw it as part and parcel of life, the business. It was part of the package essentially. And it wasn't until I sort of, I guess, retired from my musical career, I realised I was in a bit of a tricky spot with it, and I came back and tried to sort of integrate into civilian life, and I had this urge to drink every day, and it was getting to the same sort of time in the afternoon, evening, and I found myself just almost automatically just coming back from the shop with a 4 pack of beers or whatever, and it just then became a habit that continued. And I think that was my first moment, that was my epiphany that, okay, yeah, there's something going on with alcohol here. But I actually wasn't even ready to walk away from it at that point. I was like, okay, I still enjoy drinking, and my social life was still quite vibrant at that time in terms of going out and going to the pubs and bars and partying and that sort of thing. It was something that I wasn't prepared to do anything about. Although I realized, I think in the back of my mind, a seed had been planted that, okay, maybe there's something a little bit unconventional with my relationship here. I was drinking, every day, and that sort of habit continued really through my 20s, until it started to cause me significant issues, and I was it was affecting my health, my mental health, and I was having quite adverse effects on my life as a result of that. But there was a very sort of nascent idea in my mind that it could be something that could be problematic, but I wasn't prepared to really sort of deal with that any further until many years later, until I realised that it was a problem. So again, it's a slightly sort of quite long, sort of like convoluted answer, but I think ultimately it was something that was very slow. It was very subtle, and it took a long time for me to address it, and that was part of me really grappling with, I guess, the social stigma, and working out, is it something that I can live with? Is it something that moderation will take care of? And you have this sort of real sort of I had a battle that lasted for quite a long time in terms of working out, what do I do with that? Is it something that I need to give up completely? Is that something that I can even achieve? Is that something that I'm capable of doing? And that dynamic, and that took another year or 2 years to get to the bottom of that. So yeah, that's my very long sort of protracted answer. But yeah, I'm not sure about yours, Adam, and what your experience was.
Yeah, no, I'll share that, and I'll comment, Mike. I appreciate you sharing that again with George and I. It's a tangled kind of web, and it takes time, to undo that knot. I would say. Mine has been a long time too. I did not drink or really touch anything. I think I tried half a cigarette in high school, and I think my dad might have passed me a light beer at probably in high school too, where we were eating hard shell crabs or something. It was just sort of a tradition for that, and I didn't like the taste of it, and I didn't like the taste of the cigarette. So I didn't do either of those things. And even though I was a drummer in high school, and I don't know if it's the same on your side of the pond, Mike, but I was in drumline and marching band, and they were one of the biggest, stoner groups of all time. But I never had any idea, because I think I was so naive. They're like, we're not even inviting him to our parties. Like they didn't even want me a part of it, and I just didn't think. I was just sort of naive to it, which is fine. And I got to college, and it was almost like a novelty. So pretty early on, someone asked me, they're like, well, why don't you drink? And I don't know where this answer came from, but I said back then, I was like, I think I'd like it too much. And after I said it, I was like, why did I say that? Because I didn't think that consciously, right? But clearly it was correct, because then once I started drinking, it was fun for my friends to be like, oh, let's get going drunk. And then within about 2 weeks, they're like, all right, he's drunk again. Like that, it flip-flopped that quickly, being like, all right, this isn't fun anymore, because now he does it all the time. So that, the luster was gone.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it started for me. and I had certainly lots of ups and downs through it. I was functional, so it wasn't throughout the entire time. For the most part, like there were things. I had a DUI, which should have been a wake up call. It was not, or at least not the level I needed to. But there were times that I kind of was moderate with it. But for me, it was not. It was an addiction that was subtle in that I could still function, work wise, never really had an issue. I would be in industries. I'm in an industry even now where like alcohol is condoned. That's where you take customers to and all that kind of stuff. And so it just had a really slippery way of finding its way back in my life. And COVID was a test that I did not do so well with, which meaning like I'd cut out alcohol about half the time. I'd had my kids half the time, just me. And then the other time when I didn't have them, I would drink. So that was like a 50-50. And that was a lot healthier until COVID, where I'm just like, hey, why not? The world's closed, I deserve it type stuff. So fast forward to, recently before I stopped, because again, it's been, 7 or 8 months. The time frame doesn't matter, but I try to give context for, anyone listening. Not just been a couple days, but it's not been years yet, where it was every night and a big volume. I mean, a bottle or two of wine a night was not atypical. That was most of the time. And so there was plenty of low points that I could have chosen to stop, but that's not how it worked for me. At least I'd had the notion that it'll leave me soon, and then when it left, it was just like saying goodbye to a friendship that had run its course. And there's some temptations and some dreams, evidently, but that's kind of how mine went. But it goes back to just like you mentioned, George, when I said, I think I'd like it too much. I have no regrets because clearly this was the path. But somewhere inside, my soul was like, because you'd like it too much, and
Mhm.
let's just see how these words go for you.
Yeah,
So,
right. That's
took what
interesting, how you didn't like alcohol earlier and you didn't like the taste of cigarette. My mom, when I guess I was in middle school, we were at the table and, I was asking her what she was drinking. She had a beer and she asked me if I wanted to taste it, and tasted it, and I didn't like it. So that kind of turned me off to alcohol. And then my dad had a younger brother who came to visit us. I lived in Houston at the time, and he looked so old. And I asked my dad, I said, "Is that your older brother?" And he looked at me like I was crazy. And he's like, "No, that's my baby brother. Like I'm 4 or 5 years older or something." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, he looks like that because he smokes all the time." And I was like, "Fuck that shit." I was like, "I'm not gonna do any cigarettes." So when I was in school, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke. I knew people that did marijuana. I didn't do that. And it's weird for me. I was oddly comfortable being in places where people were drinking and smoking and doing whatever and not participating. And I was fortunate that for some reason, and I don't know why. I mean, I guess if we thought about it, we'd figure it out. But people always seem to kind of usually respect me, at least the ones I was around, when they would offer me, and I'd say no, thank you. It wasn't like, no, man, I ain't doing that shit. There wasn't any
there
animosity.
wasn't a judgment attached to
Yeah,
it.
it was like, "Hey, would you like some?" It's like, "No." And even though I'd always say no, they'd always offer, but they never, my best friend, I had a best friend, and he would say, "Oh, we need to see what George is like when he's high and everything, and blah, 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 and get him real stoned." And then we had another friend that would say, "Nah, man, he's already silly and goofy without anything. Like, can you imagine what it'd be like?" I mean, all that to say, I didn't try like marijuana or anything until, I don't know, maybe I was in my late 30s. And then when I told my brothers what, that I had done it, they were tripping out. Like, they're like, "What?" Because they would do it all the time. But yeah, it's just been weird. And like, I kind of saw, like, at least on that part, I kind of saw, I mean, we're all addicted to something, right? In some form or fashion. But on that part, the alcohol and drugs, I kind of saw how, or at an early age, how everything and everybody was tied into it. And I was always kind of an outsider on that. And I was in IT, and in that industry, you would have vendors take you out to meals and drinking and all this stuff, and they'd buy rounds of drinks. And I was a casual drinker, and it's funny because at home, like, we would have, we're Latin, so we would have parties that went till 4 in the morning or 5, and it was drinking from like 8 p.m. until then. It wasn't me, but my family and everyone else. And but it's funny, like, I don't feel like anyone in my family was an alcoholic. But when they would have a party, they would go hard, like all night. So I grew up more in a casual drinking thing. And like I said, for some reason, I was never into any of that, and I've always felt indifferent. I guess, like, okay, yeah, you can do what you want. I don't.
Right.
It doesn't
So
bother me. It doesn't entice me. Maybe I'll have a drink. Here's what I like. I like margaritas. So if I go to a Mexican restaurant, I might have a margarita if they're good, but that's about it. And I found that once I stopped drinking socially, even a lot, like it would take even less to get to me. But yeah, it's just very weird. I've always felt comfortable being in places where everyone else is doing something and I'm not participating.
and I appreciate you mentioning that, George, because now being in social settings, like, and I've been in plenty since I rejoined the workforce. Like, I went to a, we had a dinner. Dinner was great. I drink club sodas now. Mike, you and I have talked about that because it looks enough like an adult beverage that, like, people don't, and even if they do ask, I really don't care anymore. You put a lime in anything, it looks like it's something. Um, but I went to a cigar bar where most of the people were drinking, but the two people that I were talking to, again, another three like this, um, one I think was drinking, one wasn't, one was smoking, but it didn't mind. I didn't mind the secondhand smoke. It was just for a little bit, but um, I guess I would just say it was a good rudder for me to be like, no, I'm very happy and feeling good. Just kind of like now you or George, I guess, all along. I'm good, and no one really pushed anything or whatever else. It's been really healthy for me in particular for that. And George, I can appreciate you having the willpower, which for you probably is just like waking up in the morning as early as I make you wake up, waking up in the morning to have a margarita. But for me, it would be okay. Well, if one's good, then two's better, and three's wonderful. And by the time I'm so far down the road, I'm like, well, now I feel great. Whatever. If I'd stopped at one or two, I'd been like, ugh. But I just never did.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the thing for me. So, George, uh, do you have my dear brother, perfect being? Do you have any
Yeah.
addictions that you
I
do?
don't want anybody to think that I'm perfect. I mean,
No, no, I'm joking. I'm joking. But
yeah.
are there any vices that you have struggled with to the level
Well,
that Mike
there's
or I?
there's one that's ongoing, and I don't know that I've ever sat down and said I'm going to stop doing it, but I do bite my fingernails. I've always done that since I was a kid. Huh? Yeah, and it's funny because I was always more self conscious about it in the past, and I have gone through um, times where I didn't do it for a little while, but it seems like I always come back to it, and I don't know why. My wife will see me doing it, and she'll ask me like, "What are you anxious about or nervous about?"
Right.
My answer is I don't know, and it's like I don't know what causes it. It might be some kind of anxiety or something, but I don't know.
Maybe. Could be.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. Mike, when you were drinking in the past, was it more binge related like mine was? Like, you could go, I think you mentioned you could go a couple days or maybe even a week, and then as soon as you went back, it was just hard in the paint like me. Was that how you were too, or not really?
Yeah, so I probably went through a couple of phases with it really. I think sort of during my 20s, I was drinking every day, 7 days a week. And, through the week, yeah, sure, it's moderate. I was maybe more of like a functioning alcoholic, if you like. I, had a relatively reputable job and was building my career and, all that sort of stuff. So for all intents and purposes, life seemed, like it was pretty normal. So I tried to limit it during the week to maybe a few drinks in the evening, but it was every evening. And then during the weekend, it would be binge drinking. My issue was, I'm sure that other people can relate to this, is that once I had a drink, I could just not stop at that. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what the science is behind it. I don't know what the rationale is behind that. But I was never one of these people that could just have one and walk away, and it always had to be until there was like a requisite amount of alcohol that I liked to have that would induce a state in me that
Yep.
was something that I enjoyed. And I always had to get there. And I
That's right.
don't know, sometimes that would change. Maybe it could be, three, four drinks. Sometimes it needed to be more. But there was a state that I'd like to induce within myself. And I'd probably sort of drink at least to that stage. I'd often want to go beyond that, but there'd be things like, I would be, maybe tired, I need to go to bed or get up early for work and so on. When I started trying to address the situation, I would actually, my willpower was pretty good, and I would go through Monday to Friday, and I'd try not to drink. And actually, often I'd be pretty successful at that. And then the issue there is I'd have all this pent up desire to consume alcohol. I would just unleash Friday through to Sunday evening, and it would just be non-stop, and it was just archaic, and everything
Quick
was
question, Mike, if you don't mind me interrupting. So when you talked about not being able to not drink during the week, was the drinking for you something that you needed to do by yourself, or it was just as good by yourself, or was it something you had to do only when there were people around, and that's why it was easier for you to not drink? I'm just wondering if it was just the alcohol itself that was the draw, or the whole thing.
yeah. I mean, that's a really good question. 'Cause I did drink socially a lot, but ultimately, sort of favorite sort of place would be sort of actually in the end. It sounds quite depressing, really, but I would drink often by myself, and that would be after work, or even resultantly during COVID, the lockdown periods, would be at the weekends by myself, in the living room listening to music or whatever, and it'd be sort of an isolated event, and I just sort of like use it just to numb out, really. So yeah, I was quite sort of insular in that sense, and I quite enjoyed that element. So it became very isolating, and I guess that's probably a story that other people can relate to and register with as well. And that's when again, it takes so long to even realize that that habit is a problem, because it ends up being the one thing you look forward to, and the the state that you look forward to being in. But yeah, it went through phases. I managed to hold off, during Monday to Fridays, quite often, through probably my early 30s, and then I would binge drink, quite aggressively at the weekends, and then probably spend Monday, Tuesday trying to get normal again, feeling okay by Wednesday. Probably have a productive Wednesday, Thursday, and then hitting it again on Friday after work. So that was more my pattern. But yeah, it was binge drinking in the sense that I couldn't ever stop after one,
Mhm.
ever, and that's what really prevents me from drinking now, even that temptation, because I know, to the very core of me, that even if I might be tempted, or someone say, "Oh, just have one," I know completely categorically and absolutely that it would never be just one, because it never ever has been, it never could be, and it never will be. So it would just be, the deluge of alcohol would follow that. Um, so yeah, that was basically my patterns, and I did have the willpower to stop, and I did go through moments of trying to push hard in the gym, and sort of try and counterbalance the alcohol with other sort of seemingly positive habits, and it worked for a little bit of time, but it always came back in. There was always like that date that was in the future, that I was like, okay, if I hold out till then I'm going to get what I want, and what I wanted was always just to induce that state of intoxication that was a sweet spot for me, where I just was numbing out, and you know that's basically, it was my reward for not having drunk for 3 to 4, 5 days, which was crazy, and that was a cycle for a while.
Hey,
Yeah.
Mike, um, do you feel that maybe back then when you were drinking was possibly like you were missing something, like there was something you didn't have back then, either a way to think, or someone in your life, or a situation or whatever, and then now that you've stopped drinking, or maybe what could have helped you stop drinking is, or that did stop you, help you stop drinking, is that now you did find the things that you were missing, whatever it is, whether it's spirituality or friendship or love or belonging. Do you think maybe that might have contributed to it when you compare? And you don't have to share as what you don't want, but if you look back at your life when you were totally drinking versus now, like, do you feel your life is more fuller, and maybe like your life now supports you not having a drinking problem, if that makes sense?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. So my life definitely supports me not having a drinking problem, and that's something that I've actually tried to make so through the implementation of various routines and disciplines and infrastructures and so on. And that's something that, look, I'm a massive advocate for, and will say to other people that might want to talk to me about advice on what do I do. It's like, yeah, you're going to quit drinking alcohol, right? That's exactly what you're going to do. That's the main goal and point and objective here. But you don't just quit alcohol. You quit alcohol and you replace the alcohol with many other different disciplines, habits, infrastructures, routines, all these sort of things, these components that aggregate to support your sobriety or support not having alcohol in your life. And that's basically my life now. And that comes through, things like, family, friends, connection, um, fitness, the gym, various hobbies, and my career and my job and all that sort of stuff. But I feel like drinking started out for me purely as like a fun thing. It was what we did with friends, so there was a fun element, and that lasted for a while, sure. And that probably lasted actually for a few years because through college, university, playing music, there was a lot of partying, a lot of fun, a lot of good stories, all that sort of stuff that go hand in hand with it, alongside some sort of unfortunate and bad ones as well. But then I think what happened was I was so used to, consuming alcohol so regularly that it probably did become part of my mechanism for dealing with, life in a sense. And it became a bit of an emotional crutch for me, whether it was for good things, bad things, indifferent. And it became some sort of release to take the edge off life during bad times, to give me the edge in life during good times, and to add to almost every occasion. And then it just really sort of went forward from there. And that there's a sort of one of the tweets that I wrote that sort of sums it up, and it says that sort of alcohol takes the edge off of life, but quitting alcohol gives us the edge in life.
Mm.
And that's something that I really do believe in. But what I was using it to take the edge off of all of the bad stuff and the stress and the pressure that comes with life. And I had just inherently sort of gone into a cycle of self-medicating with alcohol to deal with those sort of feelings and emotions, which are they're part and parcel of life. You can't get away from
Yeah.
it. It doesn't matter
I
who you are, what you come from, where you're going. You're going to have to deal with that. That is, in its very essence, life. So I almost had to sort of, recalibrate myself and learn how to deal with those things and feel those things again, which wasn't easy. But by doing that, you become stronger as a result of that. And that's how, how do you overcome your fears? You overcome your fears by confronting them. And that's what makes you less afraid. You do it once, you do it twice, you do it three times. And each time you do that, you become a little bit stronger as a result. And that's, again, part of my advice for people looking to quit alcohol. Yeah, it's going to be scary attending that, the birthday, the work party, the Christmas do, the social event, the football match. I mean, I went to go watch my team on Saturday, the mighty Saints, the mighty Southampton, and I couldn't have ever have envisaged myself going to a football game and not drinking, alcohol, probably from 11 o'clock in the morning all the way to kick off, and rushing from the pub to the ground to make it in time for the kickoff whistle and stuff like that. But you face these things, just bit by bit by bit, and each time you become stronger. And that's what happened, or what I had to do over, really a course of years. And each time you gradually get the confidence and the strength to take on a little bit more, and then suddenly life becomes a bit normal, or a bit more normal, or you become more resilient, more capable of living life. And this was
Yeah.
part of my amazing reflection earlier, sort of last week, that I talked about at the start of the podcast here. That's when you realize, you look back and think, wow, like actually I've come a long way. A
That's
lot
right.
has changed now. And what was, the just complete sort of overwhelming fear of like attending, you know, a birthday party, or some sort of like social event, all those years ago, now just becomes complete second nature. And actually going to the football match of the weekend, it's not even a thought in my mind. All I'm thinking about is, I really want to go, I really want to support my team, and I want to see us win. I'm not even thinking about alcohol, I'm just thinking about the great weather, the great time.
Yeah,
So
I I really appreciate you sharing that, Mike. And for the last several minutes here, and I know we're at time, we'll need to wrap up. But um, I keep thinking about how you'd said it a couple times, and not the same words, but Mike, there was a destination that you wanted to get to. You might not know the destination, and that's at least how I felt with alcohol too. Like, I need this amount of commensurate, to get me where I'm going to go. Well, where are you going? I don't know, but it's not here. And
yeah,
when you stop, I think any addiction, you realize the destination either doesn't matter, or it's right here, just right here within yourself. Whether you're watching that football match now or doing anything else, um, and I think when you can get comfortable, at least speaking through my lens, when I can get comfortable with being good, just right here, there isn't anywhere to go. There's no state of mind to have to get to go someplace. The destination is right where you are, right at that point in time. Staying present. At least that's what I think for me. Um, Mike, anything else you want to take us home with, or George, for you? I really appreciate you both making the time.
Yeah,
This has been
definitely.
wonderful.
no, thank you. And it's been, thanks for having me on. And I completely agree. Everything that we want and need in life is here right now. The magic is in the moment. It's in the moment. It's in the present. It's in the experience.
Mhm.
That's something that I've learned. If I actually look back at my old experiences now, a lot of them I can't actually really fully remember, or if I do remember them, I remember that I actually really wasn't that present. And there's probably like a form of vacant self that was there in and amongst that experience, a little bit messy, a little bit hazy. And life's too short for that. And I really do. I do see that now, and I see, you know, the beauty in simpler sort of moments that I never could have fathomed from before, whilst being a drinker. And that's, I think, in essence what sobriety is about for me. And you put it perfectly. It's about feeling your feelings, being present, and they're going to be good, bad, and different. But if alcohol can make the bad feelings um, lessened, if it can assuage the bad feelings that you feel in life, and it can take the edge off those, well, then I can tell you this: it can absolutely take away how good you're going to feel the good feelings too.
Yeah, good
So it
point.
works both ways. If you want to feel the bad feelings less, sure, it can do that, but it will make you feel the good feelings less as well. And that is something that's too precious. It's too precious to forgo. We can't ever do that. So I'll close it out on that. But thank you so much, both of you. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you,
My
Mike.
pleasure.
George, anything else you wanted to mention?
No, that was great. Thank you, Mike.
Beautiful. I appreciate you both. Have a good day. Hang on for a couple seconds.
Appreciate
And
you.
everyone, thank you for listening in. Goodbye, everyone.